Ash Armand was a popular fitness YouTuber and reality TV star that threw his life away in an instant. And this video explores his murderous actions and the strange path that led him there. With over 69,000 subscribers and an entire fanbase dedicated to him and his body, Akshaya had many positive things working in his favour. But for one reason or another, voluntary or not, one evening would change his life forever, with another losing hers. The question is, who is Ash Armand? Who was Herleen Dulai? And why was she murdered? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're heading to the bright lights and buzz of Las Vegas to look at the dark case of Ash Armand. Being a YouTuber myself, I can understand the complexities and pressures of being one. But when this personal fitness YouTuber chose murder instead, I can't say I understand his logic. Coffeehouse Crime is all about true crime, strange and chilling stories, and the best way to support me is by subscribing to the channel. So, if you like dark and fascinating stories and think I should finally change the pattern of my shirt, then please subscribe now. And now, with that said, please grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat and get ready for the deep dive. This is the case of Ash Armand. Today, we're taking a trip deep into the Mojave Desert found in Nevada. However, we aren't about to set our case in a sand-filled and arid landscape. Instead, our case today takes us to the bright and bizarre city of Las Vegas. The fittingly named Sin City is notorious for its gambling, fine dining, upmarket shopping, and adult entertainment industry. It is an extremely recognizable place to be, and a top travel destination for many looking to walk on the wilder side of life. Take a trip down the famous Strip, with its brightly lit flashing signs and some of the city's many extravagant casinos and hotels, all of which host performances from some of the most famous acts in the world. Now, I think we all already knew that Las Vegas can be a crazy place, but after researching what it's known for, I genuinely think I could be here for hours. In short, it's a place for human impulses, be it food, gambling, all the way through to sex and drive-through marriages. The city is also known as a destination for many aspiring individuals hoping to make it big. And in a place so famous for its various forms of extravagant entertainment, it is not hard to see why. This is also where we happen to find the leading lady in today's case, that being 29-year-old Herleen Dulai. Originally born in Santa Clara, California, to her loving parents in a Sikh household, Herleen's middle name, Kaur, means lioness, a name that is often given to daughters within the Sikh faith. Her parents, who were originally from India, were extremely well educated and affluent. Her father was an aerospace engineer, and her mother achieved not one but 2 master's degrees. Now, Herleen was the youngest of 3 siblings, and the other 2 would always claim that she was her parents' favourite. Affectionately given the nickname Happy Herleen, she was always seen to be smiling and cracking jokes around the home. While simultaneously being outgoing at home, she was also a sensitive and thoughtful person. Her best friend was the family's golden retriever named Rustam, and even while young, she refused to go to the zoo because she hated seeing animals in cages. She was also sensitive towards other members of her family. And when her older sister moved out for college, she locked herself in a closet and cried because she didn't want her to leave. Herleen spent most of her childhood in California. Classmates recall her as an extremely bright and ambitious teenager, focusing on her studies to one day work in biological science. And this ambition would eventually lead her to Temple University in Pennsylvania, where she would go on to achieve her bachelor's degree. After graduating in 2017, she took the plunge and moved to Las Vegas to find a more vibrant and exciting life, where she also planned to find and gain her postgraduate degree. While here, Herleen began to work on her own self-care. She always had self-confidence issues, was debilitatingly shy, and had anxiety. But a turning point came when she joined Ace Fitness, a, quote, life-changing facility that promotes unity and self-development through fitness. At least for Herleen, this seemed to ring true because she found a real sense of community here. She became quite the gym buff, and over the next 30 days lost over 40 pounds. Her love for the gym would lead her to become a personal trainer there, and she became quite close with the manager, Nick, who helped her with her physical and mental health issues. Around this time frame, Herleen claimed to be suffering from a brain tumour. Now, it's not very clear as to whether this existed or not. Some people close to her claimed that it was a lie, while others claimed it to be a thyroid tumour. Either way, likely not wanting to burden them with worry, she didn't tell her family, and instead leaned on her gym community for support.
Ace Fitness and these people here are my family, and they pulled me out of the biggest storms that I ever went through. Last year, I was battling a brain tumor, and I went through
By the year of 2020, Herleen had a new lease of life. She was finally growing in confidence and had begun to learn to love herself. But that didn't mean that throughout her health journey, she didn't have the occasional relapse and poor self-judgment. And unfortunately, this is where I have to introduce you to Ash. Whether it be via Instagram DMs or a community day at the gym, we aren't quite sure. But it's around this time that Herleen found herself in the company of 38-year-old small-time reality TV star and fitness YouTuber Ash Armand. And of course, what better way to learn who he is through his own videos?
Yeah.
Let's tell people, like, who are you and what do you do, man?
Okay, so who am I? Well, professionally, I work as a male escort for a company called Cowboys for Angels. I used to do a show called Gigolos on Showtime. I'm also, my background is in massage therapy and fitness. And I've studied about like sexuality for a long time. It's something that I've always been really interested in, and how affects society and how people interact through their sex, and how to kind of master your own sexuality so you know what you're doing, but it's not something that dictates your behavior.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, so you said you used to work for the Showtime show, or?
Well, I mean, technically it's not canceled, but we haven't filmed in like 2 years.
Okay.
So I don't know what they're doing with the show.
You may have guessed already, but Ash Armand wasn't his actual birth name. His real name is Akshaya Kubiak, and he was born in India to vastly multicultural parents. With his mother being Asian Indian and his father being Polish American, Ash has a very unique and distinct appearance. And his physicality was obviously something that he greatly valued. Towering at a height of 6 foot and 2 inches and with long black hair, his physical features turned out to be essential for his livelihood, which also happens to be the reason behind changing his name. So, the reality TV show that he was featured on was named Showtime Gigolos, which, as you can imagine, focused on the work and lives of male escorts. Akshaya would use the name of Ash Armand for both business and publicity purposes, probably in a desperate bid to try and keep his business and personal lives separate. Apparently, becoming an escort was never really his ambition, and his family say that this just kind of happened. It was 8 years before meeting Herleen that he was living in Miami with his then partner and their son, as he worked as a massage therapist and a model. You see, Ash had always been raised in a holistic manner, believing in many variations of therapy, healthy living and spirituality. He also grew up in Japan being, quote, immersed in the healing traditions and philosophies of the East and the West, end quote, as his mother would put it. Life after childhood would follow suit. At the age of 16, he left school in order to study the ancient Chinese discipline of Qigong, a form of martial arts which encompasses meditation, health and spirituality, and often includes the use of medicinal healing herbs. He was extremely well traveled too, studying both massage and holistic healing therapies in Thailand, Japan, Europe and India, before finally settling in Miami. During this time, Ash was also involved in the psytrance community, a group of people who would meet up in the countryside, take psychedelics and hallucinate while listening to trance music. And it's here that he was, of course, introduced to the world of drugs. Having said that, he was by no means addicted to them, nor did he necessarily abuse them. Instead, he saw their use as more of a healing product. You can probably see him as more of a hippie-chasing magic mushrooms kind of guy, rather than a cocaine addict on a 4-day bender. After settling in Miami, he opened his own massage business named Akshaya Touch. And in 2011, after being headhunted by an agency through social media, his work as a male escort began. Ash offered his company and services to women who were often lonely or down on their luck. He worked for the escort website named Cowboys for Angels, where Showtime eventually headhunted him for their reality TV show named Gigolos, which of course followed the lives of several male escorts.
We're not able to fill appointments right now. I'm gonna have to bring somebody else in.
Get to know your new gigolo.
Hey, let me sit up here. Is that cool?
Yeah, that works for you.
Meet Ash.
My name is Ash Armand. I'm a gigolo. Very comfortable being around people, being around women. I've had a lot of lovers, so it felt like it would be an easy thing for me.
You're so sensual and sexy. I think you might have to clear your schedule.
Who is Ash Armand?
I think I'm just a very nurturing person. I'll say worldly, passionate about what I do.
Worldly, huh?
So I was born in India. My mother's Indian, my dad's American. I grew up in Japan.
I love your skin color. It's amazing.
Thank you.
What is the secret to being a good gigolo?
To succeed in the business, you have to be adaptable, and very personable with other people. What's your mix?
German and French.
Hot. You shouldn't be a self-centered, egoistic person.
What do you get out of it?
I genuinely look at it as almost as like a healing experience. Oh, wow. Sometimes people like break down and cry because you touched them in a way that they've never been touched before. So it's just really giving them a lasting memory.
What's it like being the new guy?
It's definitely a little challenging in the beginning because the guys are kind of sussing you out.
Need me to show you how, newbie?
But generally they're really cool, so it was easy to vibe with them. We're all trying to do the best and be the best gigolo possible.
And how are your skills?
I think I'm good.
Watch Ash in action on season 3 of Gigolos.
While on this show, Ash portrayed himself as he saw himself in real life, that being a sensitive, peaceful and gentle giant. Adding this to his refined physique and long flowing hair, there was no arguing that he was a good fit for the program. But of course, like any other form of reality television, or even here on YouTube, it is always wise to take everything seen on screen with a hefty pinch of salt. It turns out that a lot of the scenarios and so-called clients on the show were either fake or scripted with paid actors. Not to mention, Ash had also moved to Las Vegas while working on the show, which, as many of you should know, is a state where prostitution is illegal, so everything that was actually occurring on that show was entirely fabricated. This didn't stop Ash from characterizing his work as some form of healing, believing that what he was doing was actually helping women. His clients were often suffering from mental health struggles, or were otherwise not considered to be conventionally attractive. And sure, this could be seen as caring and sensitive, but it could also be seen as a highly predatory move towards them. In exchange for his company, Ash would charge $800 for 2 hours, $3,000 for overnight, and a whopping $25,000 for an entire week. This work would take him past his time as a TV star, and after featuring in 38 episodes, the TV show finally ended in 2016. Over this period of time, Ash developed a very bad habit of taking steroids, with thanks to his own insecurity when comparing himself to the other gigolos. But despite the show eventually ending, this bad habit never stopped. No surprise, but during his time in the spotlight, Ash gained a liking to the attention he was getting from the public, especially women. He began to frequent the Las Vegas Strip in order to pick up bottle girls, and his use of drugs and alcohol began to increase. Though, again, his friends claim that he never became addicted. Now, Ash thoroughly enjoyed being a hot accessory to women. He loved to be seen as the so-called trophy date, and wanted to be among other beautiful and like-minded people.
Alright, so this is what I do to keep my hair really healthy. My brother went bald when he was really young, so I really try to pay close attention to what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body that's nutritional for my hair, and also what I put in my hair. And I'll just show you what I do.
Friends of Ash would go on to say that his time on TV changed him, and that he believed that he now had enough attention to spread his message of healing toward the general public. Moving forward, his life seemed to follow the same pattern as before, practicing his holistic lifestyle while also taking the time out to party. His Instagram profile around this time frame would portray him as a fitness and sex educator as well as a father. He saw himself as a kind of sexual shaman and holistic healer, which, of course, in the year 2020 is what would eventually draw Herleen towards him. Herleen had always struggled with her self-esteem, and to now have this beautiful man paying attention to her was something that most likely would have made her feel very special. Now, it's no secret that Herleen herself was actually very beautiful, but I guess we all are sometimes our own worst enemies. Now, Ash would usually hang around with Instagram famous women with millions of followers. He took great pride in trying to build a social media, and would often post more and more provocative photos to try and encourage engagement. So with all of this in mind, people did question why he chose a humbler and more down-to-earth woman like Herleen. Some speculated that he may have been drawn to her because of their own shared Indian heritage, while others thought it may be because Herleen was from a well-off family, and having a stable source of income like that was very appealing to him. After all, he did have a very bad habit of overspending. Over the next few weeks, the pair began to spend a lot of time together, but despite this, Herleen's family weren't even aware of his existence. For whatever reason, she kept all of that under wraps. And although their relationship always involved sex, it would soon become much more than that. Ash took great pride in being able to spiritually heal Herleen, and apparently claimed that he could even eradicate a tumor. The two began to take so-called healing trips together, which included a trip to Utah in June of 2020. Ash claimed that during this trip, he helped to reach the next level of her mental state. Allegedly, he had unearthed some trauma in her past that she had long forgotten about. Of course, this was not a healthy way to deal with a vulnerable person's mental health. Ash was not qualified for this type of therapy, and was meddling with her emotions. You see, Ash claimed that he could heal her, and although he did reference some proven techniques such as CBT, he also referenced unproven ones such as herbs and drugs. And in July of 2020, his controversial way of healing would end in a tragedy almost too violent to believe. At 10:23 AM on the morning of July the 16th, Las Vegas police received a frantic phone call from a distraught and panicked man. And of course, the man on the other end of the line was Ash. "This is going to sound insane, because it is insane," he told the dispatcher. Ash claimed that, after waking up in the morning, he found an unresponsive Herleen next to him. Once asked if she was still breathing, and assuming this was an unfortunate random cardiac arrest, he was instructed to perform CPR on her while an ambulance rushed to their location. Sadly though, this would do nothing to help. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics briskly made their way up to the bedroom, but when they got there, they were met with a sight that was far from an unexpected heart attack. Herleen's face was almost totally unrecognizable. She was black, blue, and swollen from obvious signs of trauma. She had suffered heavy bruising quite literally from head to toe. Blood had also pooled around her head, and sadly, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Realizing the gravity of the situation, one paramedic pulled Ash to the side to make sure that he didn't try to run away. In a current state of shock and despair, he told the officers that he would never do such a thing, and further confessed that he was actually responsible. Saying that, Ash claimed that apparently Herleen had attacked him first, and of course, after this, he was very swiftly arrested.
I'm out here this afternoon to brief you on a homicide investigation that we are conducting in the southwest part of the valley in the 8400 block of Blackstone Ridge Court, which is again near the intersection of Blue Diamond and Decatur. I stress the details that I'm sharing right now are extremely preliminary, but at around 10:20 this morning, we received a 911 call reporting that a male or a female was unresponsive inside the residence about 100 yards behind me. Officers and medical personnel arrived on scene, and that female was pronounced deceased. The male boyfriend who lives in the residence, who is an Asian male in his late 30s, was taken into custody. At this point, we're in the process of obtaining a search warrant to process the scene, and our initial observation, we believe there was a struggle or a battery of some sort, but this, again, it was very, very preliminary, and that's from the initial walkthrough of the scene. So with that, I will take a couple questions, but I stress I don't have much more to share than that.
How old did you say the victim was?
The victim is an Asian male. He is in his late 30s. We have not identified the female. She appears to be she's a white female, appears to be early 30s would be my best guess. We believe there was some type of struggle, but again, it's still too early. Our initial observations, we believe, we actually have the male in custody at this point. So it does appear that there is a struggle of some sort between the in custody male boyfriend and the deceased female.
A thorough examination of the crime scene did nothing but raise even more questions about what happened the night prior, and the more investigators looked into this, the more they were surprised. As previously mentioned, Herleen's body was bruised from head to toe, but the true extent of her injuries would only come to light after her autopsy. The report concluded that she'd experienced 5 broken bones, 5 fractures, 9 abrasions, 31 bruises, and 14 lacerations across her entire body, which, very disturbingly, even included her tongue, ears, and hands. The unfortunate woman suffered severe internal bleeding. Blood was found in her lungs, and, most horrifyingly, some of her teeth were found in her stomach. The cause of her death was determined to be blunt force trauma, with strangulation as a secondary cause. In addition to this, Herleen and her suitcase were both covered in candle wax, and further toxicology reports would conclude that she had MDMA, caffeine, alcohol, and psilocybin in her system, with psilocybin being the scientific name for the hallucinogenic hallucinogenic compound found in magic mushrooms. Needless to say, but friends were shocked to learn of these details, as many claimed that apparently Herleen was essentially straight edge. She rarely drank and looked after herself, and had never even had weed, let alone MDMA or psychedelics. Within the condo, they found bloody handprints all over the bedroom and in the utility room. Blood was found inside of the washing machine, and bloodstains were washed out on the counter, therefore revealing a crude attempt to conceal the crime. It also confirms that the phone call to emergency services was not made as soon as Ash woke up. Of course, what I'm alluding to here is that this seemed to be nothing but a poorly thought out cover-up. Tragically, Herleen's parents were never notified about her death, but they did know something was wrong because she never took this long to reply to messages. That was when, on the evening of July the 16th, and after making numerous calls to her phone, somebody finally picked up. But sadly, it wasn't her daughter. Instead, a solemn voice from the coroner's office spoke back. Although Ash admitted his guilt, friends, family, and fans all rallied behind him, insisting that a man so gentle and kind would never be able to do such a thing. But upon further questioning, the true events and the ugly details behind her death would finally come to light. Going back to the afternoon of that fateful night, Herleen travelled to Ash's condo to do some spiritual healing and tap into his so-called healing aura to help her through her health scare. But Ash's methods were controversial to say the least. They planned to take some magic mushrooms, pray, meditate, and then watch the movie Avatar. Not exactly sure what Avatar had to do with the journey to healing, but what do I know, right? This plan is exactly how the night ended up going, with leftover mushrooms found in Ash's fridge to prove this. With mushroom trips typically lasting 3 to 8 hours, it is likely that this altercation happened far before the emergency services were called. And this makes sense too, considering the haphazard cleanup would have taken multiple hours to conduct. During this time frame, Ash was obviously preoccupied with covering up his tracks rather than saving Herleen's life. A packed suitcase was found in the condo, indicating that he had at least seriously contemplated fleeing from the crime scene. At some point during that night, whether Herleen attacked him first or not, Ash attacked her with a level of violence far beyond a typical case of self-defense. By the way, it is still unknown if, at this point in time, he was in a drug-induced rage or not, because sadly, he has remained tight-lipped ever since getting himself a lawyer. Although Ash lived in a luxury Vegas condo and was paid extortionate amounts of money for his time, he was never actually smart with his cash. The man wasted almost all of it on failed business endeavors and an exuberant lifestyle, and we know that he was getting desperate because he even asked Herleen if she could help pay his rent. An envelope labeled Ash Rent was discovered in her own apartment, which further suggests that Ash may have been using Herleen and her emotions for money. It turns out that she was financially supporting him in exchange for his so-called healing services. Ash's trial was convoluted to say the least. Once again, the COVID pandemic slowed down all legal proceedings across America, but in September of 2020, he finally stood trial. Despite previously confessing, Ash would plead not guilty to Herleen's murder, but all the evidence available would suggest otherwise. Ash claimed that, at the time of her death, his drug-induced state, which included mushrooms, MDMA, steroids, and alcohol, diminished his responsibility. But of course, the judge called his defense out for exactly what it was. Total bullshit. She offered him a plea deal of voluntary manslaughter instead of murder, an offer that Ash would actually take. She therefore sentenced him to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Apparently, the sentence was lenient due to a lack of sense and premeditation. Although this was most likely the best outcome for Ash, his defense team still pushed for his minimum sentence to be reduced to 4 years, due to the unlikelihood of him ever repeating his actions in the future. Perhaps not surprisingly, and definitely thankfully, this was rejected. Although the judge agreed that Ash was unlikely to commit another violent crime, she stated that the lower sentence would not reach the gravity of this situation. It would not match the pain that her family members will forever have to deal with. Herleen's family, who of course attended the trial, gave tearful victim impact statements. Her brother stated, "She wasn't simply taken from us, she was brutally beaten to death. I don't know why my sister would need to be subdued with such force." When arrested, Akshaya Kubiak was held without bail in the Clark County Detention Center since July 2020. Though that wouldn't be without him arguing that the ongoing COVID pandemic was a good enough reason for him to make bail. Perhaps he thought that his charm would help him weasel his way out of properly serving his punishment, which, no doubt, is a disgrace to Herleen's memory. And although the man does show deep remorse, his insistence on lesser sentencing and receiving bail shows a very distinct lack of guilt. Luckily, his efforts have still amounted to nothing to this day, which is exactly how it should be. Herleen was taken from the world far before her time, and her loved ones have lost a gentle, kind and caring daughter, sister, aunt and friend. She was finally growing and blossoming into the person she'd always strived to be, learning to love herself and the community around her. Sadly, Ash was willing to take advantage of her insecurities and her health scare for his own gain, and although he may supposedly not be the violent type, it doesn't diminish his role in her death. The ongoing testimony from loved ones after her passing was filled with admiration and sorrow, with one of her closest friends saying, "I don't think I will ever meet someone with the biggest amount of love in their heart as Herleen. When you have such a loving heart, that makes you instantaneously vulnerable." Sadly, Herleen had to have 15 hours of reconstructive surgery in order to have an open casket funeral. And although Akshaya does not recall the moments that he took her life, her family will likely imagine it every day for the rest of theirs. Despite his charge of murder, Ash still sees a lot of support from his fan base. To this day, many don't believe that he was capable of committing such an act of violence. Fan mail still comes into his prison block, and a funding drive was set up to help pay for his legal fees. It turns out that, even in these cases of savage murder, pretty privilege still exists to make a mockery of the justice system. It's a bit of a strange story if you ask me. This case was entirely unpremeditated, and I actually question if he ever wanted to kill Herleen in the first place. Add a Showtime gigolo and a personal fitness YouTuber with 69,000 subscribers into the mix, and yeah, this one's quite freaky. But I think I'm going to wrap this one up here today, folks, because yeah, that's the end of the story. I don't think I've missed any details out. So, what are your thoughts about this case? Do you think that Ash ever wanted to hurt Herleen, or do you think this case was entirely unpremeditated? And do you think that 20 years is enough? As always, please leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I do genuinely try to read all of them. If you found this story interesting, then please remember to like the video, and if you do want to see more dark and fascinating stories, then please subscribe now. Anyway folks, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll be back again very soon for another one. Until that moment arrives though, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.